everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renee Jordan, and today we're going to continue on with our interactive lesson. So let's go ahead and go over to the Black-Liberation.Tech website to continue. So here we're at the Black-Liberation.Tech website. Once again, it is available in both English and Spanish. We're going to head over to lessons, and from lessons, we will scroll on down to interactions. And we are on lesson D 2.0, a story of persistence. We've already read through the story. And once again, this image was generated by ChatGPT. We read through the story that got us started, that included Ebony, and the two digital literacies or types of interactions that we discussed already, or that I walked through with you, were reading a lot online and socializing. Now, once again, these you can think of as a think aloud. When I was in school, our teachers would, specifically chemistry and mathematics, whenever they worked through a word problem, they would read the problem out loud, and then they walked through their thought process of how they went about solving the problem. And so these think alouds are so that you can see how I would go about answering the different prompts. Please feel free to follow along. You can do a side by side and work on the questions and push pause, write yours down and hear what I say or listen to what I say, and then write your answers down based on your own experiences and your interests and things that you have done. And so we're going to move on to the next three that I have prepped beforehand so that I can move a little faster. I have pre-written responses. And so the next digital literacy or interaction, if you will, that we will discuss will be tweeting. Now, I am no longer on X. However, when I'm talking about tweeting, I'm talking about posting on specific platforms, social media platforms. And so consider that as I walk through, because while it's talking about X and it's talking about tweeting, know that I'm referring to me posting on social media. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, this first prompt says, how do you use X to exchange with your audience or share ideas? Example, tweeting about your work, interests, or news. So my response, hop over to my Word document. It says, when it comes to social media, I'm very intentional about how and why I post. For me, it's never about chasing likes or trends. It's about sharing knowledge in ways that are accessible, meaningful, and rooted in purpose. My goal has always been to make sure that insights don't just live in academic reports or behind institutional walls. I want them to ripple across everyday spaces where real people are learning, growing, and building community. That's really at the heart of how I use platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Lemonade, and the Black-Liberation.Tech ecosystem. A lot of my content revolves around awareness and empowerment. I share lessons from Black-Liberation.Tech, especially around digital literacies, AI, and technology skill development, because I want my audiences, particularly Latinas, Afro-Latinas, Black women, and girls, to see themselves reflected in tech spaces. Sometimes it's advice about navigating school or careers. Other times it's a thought or quote that I hope lands at just the right time for someone who needs it. I also take a layered approach to content. When I've discussed something deeply on the podcast, I'll break it down into smaller pieces, a 60-second clip. That way, people can engage at whatever level fits their schedule or interest. It's about meeting the audience where they are. And I'll be honest, I only post when I feel it matters. If I share something, it's because it's useful, uplifting, or aligns with my values. I see sharing knowledge as a form of generosity, a way of giving back to the same digital communities that have poured into me. I also use social media platforms to connect with scholarly and creative communities. I might share my own research, ask questions about a design issue, or highlight a framework I've been exploring in my research and development work, R&D work. Those moments of exchange, those I hadn't thought about it that way, conversations keep me inspired. So while I don't use every platform. When I do engage, it's with purpose. My digital presence is less about visibility and more about voice, using the tools available to me to democratize knowledge and make sure that the work I do doesn't just exist in theory, but reaches the people it's meant to serve. All right, so that is that prompt. Let's take a look at the next one. Think about a time when tweeting helped you connect with others or spread your ideas. What made it effective? For me, the heart of Black-Liberation.Tech has always been about leaving a trail behind, something others can follow, adapt, or even remix for their own journey. That idea of creating an open path where knowledge circulates freely, not locked in a classroom or journal, is what drives everything I post. When I share something online, whether it's a podcast clip, a reflection, or a lesson, I'm thinking about amplification. I'm thinking about how that one idea might echo beyond me. Every short clip or snippet I post is really just a digital seed, something someone can pause, reflect on, and carry forward. I see it as a kind of open classroom. The content doesn't just live on the platform, it lives in how people interact with it, apply it, and share it with their own communities. What makes that process powerful is when the content inspires movement. It's not enough for someone to just listen. I want them to do something with what they have heard. For example, if a lesson or story highlights how mentorship increases confidence, I might close the post by saying, think of one girl in your circle who needs encouragement this week. Send her a note or share a resource. That's what effectiveness looks like to me when ideas shift from awareness to action. That's really what makes sharing feel worthwhile. It's not about the analytics, it's about impact. If someone listens to a podcast clip and then decides to mentor a student, apply for that scholarship, or start a conversation about representation in tech, then that post did what it was meant to do. It helped create motion, and that's how real exchange begins. Okay, let's take a look at the next prompt. How do others use X in a way that you find inspiring or impactful? Let's take a look at my response. I'm always inspired by people who use digital spaces with openness, courage, and purpose. The ones who remind us that sharing isn't about performance, it's about community. What really moves me are women who share boldly and consistently. They don't wait for everything to be perfect. They just show up, whether it's through conference talks, grassroots workshops, or short reflections online. That kind of consistency keeps knowledge in motion. It stops ideas from being hoarded inside institutions or makes them accessible to anyone who needs them. I also find it powerful when people center identity and equity in their content, when they name race, gender, and power out loud while still leaving space for joy, creativity, and resilience. It's one thing to talk about injustice. It's another to balance that truth with celebration. When I see women highlighting shared experiences or amplifying voices that often go unheard, I'm reminded that storytelling itself is a form of advocacy. And I have so much admiration for writers and communicators who can make the complex simple without watering it down. The ones who can take a dense research idea and explain it through a story, a metaphor, or a real life example. That's a gift. It's not about simplifying the knowledge, it's about making it reachable. That's how we bridge the gap between academia and everyday people. Finally, I love the generosity of micro sharing. The people who post small, meaningful insights instead of waiting for something perfectly polished. Maybe it's a quote from a book they're reading, a mini lesson, or a reflective journal note. Those little drops of wisdom keep the community alive and learning in real time. It's a reminder that impact isn't always about the big post, it's about the steady, honest sharing along the way. All right, let's take a look at the next prompt. Are there any practices on X that you would avoid? For example, oversharing, posting unverified information. Let's take a look at my response. For me, maintaining integrity and balance in the digital world means being intentional, not just posting about what I share, but why and how I share it. First, I stay away from posts for likes. likes. I've learned that chasing validation online is a fast track to burnout and distraction. When I share something, it's because it aligns with my mission, not because I'm hoping it'll perform well. My measure of success isn't engagement metrics, it's impact. If one person listens, reflects, or acts differently because of something I shared, that's enough for me. I also set boundaries around what I share. Social media isn't real life. It's just a window into small, curated parts of it. I'm very deliberate about keeping some personal wins, joys, and challenges just for myself or my close circle. I found that protecting parts of your story allows you to stay grounded and authentic. It's why I keep most of my platforms focused on professional conversations and community impact, not the intimate details of my personal life. Another important boundary for me is avoiding harmful or careless posting. I always remind students and professionals that the internet never forgets. Another important boundary for me is avoiding harmful and careless posting. I always remind students and professionals that the internet never forgets. Even one impulsive or vulgar post can have lasting consequences. For example, in one of my previous episodes, I tell the story about Naomi, the young woman who lost her NASA internship over an inappropriate tweet, as a real reminder that our digital choices shape our professional paths. It's not about being perfect, it's about being mindful. To me, that's what is important. And finally, I make it a rule to double check information before I share it, especially when using AI tools. It's easy to assume that what's generated must be correct, but bias can be embedded right into the technology. I verify facts using trusted sources, things like .edu, .gov, or credible news outlets before reposting or citing anything. I'd rather post less frequently and be accurate than amplify misinformation. So right here, I'm going to pause and remind you that when I move into the section where we are doing the guided searches, I'm dropping the questions into Google and I'm reading off the information, and I encourage you to verify it and then trust. But for the sake of conversation, I read the information and I note that you need to look in other places and spaces to make sure that the information is correct, that it's presented in the best light, that it is indeed something that can be verified. And I make sure that I tell you all this out loud so that if someone says, hey, well, Dr. Jordan said, well, what did she say before that? She said, verify and then trust. She did not tell you this is the fact of the matter. And if I'm going through a generative AI prompt with you, I'm telling you ahead of time, I'm showing you that this is the information that has been generated, and you need to verify and then trust. Don't just take it at face value. Make sure that you are actively engaged when you're looking up things online or using generative AI for different purposes. And that way you'll know for yourself whether it is verifiable and information that is trustworthy that you can then use as a draft to create something that will help you along your way. All right, the last part of my response. At the end of the day, I use digital spaces to build trust and contribute to something meaningful. That means staying grounded in discernment, practicing digital humility, and remembering that what we share has real power to teach, to influence, and to shape how others see not just us, but the communities we represent. All right, let's take a look at the next prompt. How can you improve your use of X to strengthen your personal or professional presence online? When it comes to showing up online, especially on social platforms, I've learned that strength doesn't come from posting more. It comes from posting with purpose. The digital presence is strongest when it aligns with my mission, reflects my values, and leaves room for real human connection. First, I focus on clarity of purpose. Every post should tell a story that connects back to why I do what I do. If the story doesn't serve that purpose, if it doesn't teach, uplift, or inspire action, it probably doesn't need to be posted. I remind myself often, consistency doesn't mean noise, it means alignment. I've also learned the value of layering content. I might start with a longer podcast episode or reflection blog post, then break it down into shorter, digestible pieces, 60-second clips that give people ways to engage. That layer approach allows more people to access the message in the format that fits them best. Engagement for me has to be intentional. Before I post, I ask myself, who is this for? If the answer is to impress strangers, I pause. My peace of mind matters more than performance. I'd rather use these platforms to connect with colleagues, students, or communities who share a commitment to learning and growth than to chase visibility for its own sake. Setting boundaries is another big part of the process. There's power in choosing to post less or to step back entirely when I need to recharge. I regularly audit my digital spaces, unfollowing accounts that bring anxiety or self-doubt, and curate my feed to prioritize voices that inspire and inform me. Protecting my mental and emotional well-being helps me stay creative and consistent in the long run. And finally, I treat digital spaces as opportunities for dialogue, not just delivery. Whether it's feedback on a project or questions about a new idea, these exchanges sharpen my thinking. Talking about my work, whether online or in person, helps me refine what I call my 90-second elevator pitch, which in turn makes my message clearer and more accessible. When all said and done, showing up online isn't about having a flawless presence. It's about showing up with intention, protecting your peace, and creating a digital footprint that reflects the heart of your work. Okay, so now this next prompt is going to have us do a guided search. So, guiding question for online search. Search for Latinas, Afro-Latinas, and Black women in tech, business, or media who are known for their impactful X presence. How do they use X to amplify their message or connect with others? Okay, so let's take a look. So once again, I dropped this into Google. This is the AI overview. Once again, my homework assignment or challenge to you is to verify and then trust. I'm reading this for informational purposes and so that you will have a chance to dig deeper. So let's see what comes up with this search result. Many influential Latina, Afro-Latina, and Black women in tech, business, and media use X, formerly Twitter, to drive change, amplify their message, and build community. Their strategies range from direct activism to showcasing their professional expertise, all with the goal of increasing representation and fostering an inclusive dialogue. Notable figures and their use of X. All right, so first we have in the tech area, Ana Arriola as Director of Product Design, AI, and Insights, Cloud plus AI at Microsoft. Arriola, a Latinx trans and non-binary person, focuses on human-centered product design. On X, she advocates for authenticity and visibility for underrepresented communities in the tech industry. Next, we have Miriam Rivera, the co-founder and managing director of Ulu Ventures. Rivera is a prominent voice advocating for greater diversity in the venture capital and entrepreneurial worlds. She uses the platform to share insights on tech and investments and to champion founders from diverse backgrounds. Lily Gangas, the Chief Technology Communication Officer at the Kapoor Center. Gangas works at the intersection of technology and economic justice. Through X, she shares her belief in fostering inclusive tech ecosystems and uses her platform to address social and economic inequalities in the industry. Next, we have Noria Santa Maria Wolf, the CEO of Canticos and head of strategic audience partnerships at Meta. Wolf has earned recognition for championing diversity in media and tech. Her X presence is used to highlight and engage diverse audiences. Now we have those who are in the business sector. Paola Santana, a tech entrepreneur and lawyer in Silicon Valley. Santa Ana uses X to highlight her AI and tech ventures and her mentorship of Latinx and Black women entrepreneurs. She also shares her bicultural experiences, which she credits with helping her better understand people and cultures. Next, we have Lolita Taub, a general partner at Ganas Ventures. Taub invests in community-driven companies in the U.S. and Latin America. She uses X to share her venture capital expertise, amplify underestimated founders and funders, and promote investment in diverse business. Next, we have Bianca Key, the founder of the apparel brand Yo Soy Afro-Latina. Key uses X and other platforms to increase the visibility of the Afro-Latinx community. Her posts showcase apparel with empowering messages while highlighting her own experiences and building a community around Afro-Latinidad. Next, we have Camila De Sus, founder of the feminist bookstore Café con Libros. De Sus uses her platform to empower Afro-Latina voices. On social media, she shares reading lists and news from her bookstore, which serves as a community space for learning and connection. All right, next we're going to go to the media sector. And the first person up is Elizabeth Acevedo, the Dominican-American poet and author of The Poet X. Acevedo uses her platform to amplify the Afro-Latina experience and speak out on issues like gender violence and sexuality. Her online presence complements her celebrated work by sharing her poetry and advocating for underrepresented narratives. Next, we have Janelle Martinez, the Honduran-American multimedia journalist and founder of Ain't I Latina? Martinez focuses on educating the public about Afro-Latina womanhood. Her platform amplifies the work of Afro-Latinos in media, art, and academia, fostering a sense of community and celebration. Next, we have Jamila Lemieux, a notable culture writer and critic. Lemieux gained prominence using digital platforms to build her brand and provide social commentary. Her impactful voice and perspective have been featured across major media outlets, with her X presence serving as a key platform for her work. Next, we have Abby Phillip, a senior political correspondent for CNN. Phillip uses X to provide commentary and updates on political news. She exemplifies how Black women in media use the platform to share their expertise, engage with a wide audience, and contribute to public discourse. Okay, so this next section answers the second part of that question, how they use X for impact. These leaders leverage X in several strategic ways. Amplify underrepresented narratives. They share personal experiences and cultural stories that are often excluded from mainstream media, addressing topics like identity, diversity, and systemic inequality. Next, they build and connect communities. Many use X to create and foster communities around shared identities and goals, providing a space for support and empowerment. All right, next, educate and inform. They share their expertise, offer career advice, highlight industry news, and promote educational resources to help others succeed in their field. Next, we have engage in activism. They participate in social media campaigns and discussions to increase political power, fight injustice, and raise awareness for specific issues. Promote visibility and mentorship. By sharing their own journeys, they serve as visible role models for younger generations, offering mentorship and dispelling misconceptions about certain fields. Next, they create dynamic content. Many use a variety of media, including text, images, videos, and polls to keep their audience engaged and participating. And last but not least, network and collaborate. They engage with other professionals, influencers, and organizations through replies and quote tweets to expand their reach and show they are part of a larger conversation. All right, so that covers everything for tweeting. Next we will go through my responses to the next form of interactions or digital literacy, which is reposting. How do you use reposting as a way to share information with your audience or network? Now, here I'm going to take a moment to share where I repost the most. I am a part of a professional academic group on LinkedIn, and that is where I repost the most. And what I repost are opportunities that students, as well as faculty, as well as those who are in tech spaces, can take advantage of. So whether those are scholarships, whether they're research programs, fellowships, job openings, whether they're faculty positions, whether it's an organization that has different ways of engaging with students. So whether that's a project, if someone has a dissertation and they need participants, that is where I post the most. And because it's a professional community, and it's academic and school based, I make sure that the information that I'm sharing is something that will benefit them and not just use them as a source of information. Meaning, people aren't just going to go into this group and information mine and try to take advantage of the people who are there. And so that is the place where I repost the most. Now, when I started the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast, a form of reposting that I would do would be reading my blog post. So all along my graduate school journey, specifically my doctoral studies, I do have blog posts that reflect back to my master's programs and other things that I've experienced. But it was mainly during my doctoral journey that I wrote blog posts to keep track of things that I felt were important, things that I shared with my nieces, things that I would want to share with my nieces. And so by starting off my podcast, by reading through my blog posts, I was in that instance reposting what I already shared, but in a different format. And the information was able to get out further because while I had the blog post, I wasn't advertising it. The blog served as my digital journal that was open for others to read if they happened to come across it. And as a result of my podcast, I was able to share those blog posts out further and broader and wider and in smaller pieces. And my common practice after reading the blog post would be to reflect on it. So what else have I learned? What else was going on at the time? How could I add to what I've already shared in order to help somebody else along the way? And so that was another way that I reposted. So I use reposting in two major ways. One, to share opportunities with academic and professional groups. And then with my podcast, I was able to repost my experiences, my journey. The academic piece also required me to touch on what was going on with my personal aspects in terms of how I was keeping everything balanced. Yes, I was in school, but I also worked and I also had a life outside of work. And with all of that, I still took time to do absolutely nothing in addition to making sure that I spent time with the people that I love and care about. And so those are the two major things that I repost. And even now, although I've gone through all of my blog posts, I still refer back to them in my lessons when I reflect and do these write and reflect questions. A lot of the information comes from the blog posts in terms of the things that I've already expressed or thought of. And that's why they are a little bit more detailed than if I were to just sprout it off the top of my head. And so what I'm going to do now is go back through my prepared written response and provide you a general response to this question. So I've given you two specific instances, my LinkedIn group, as well as my blog post. And so here is my general response to this question. For me, reposting isn't just about hitting the share button. It's an act of generosity, a way of keeping knowledge in motion. I treat sharing as part of my mission through Black-Liberation.Tech and the open educational resource. So when I say it like that, I'm talking about the podcast, I'm talking about my 60-second clips, and the open educational resource, I'm referring to the website black-liberation.tech. Okay. Every time I repost or share something, I think about who might need it, how it might help them, and how it keeps information flowing beyond the walls of academia or professional circles. When I share something, I'm amplifying not just my own work, but the collective mission of making digital literacy accessible to everyone, especially those who might not see themselves reflected in traditional spaces. Reposting allows those insights to ripple outward from the classroom to the kitchen table to the comment section to the next girl who might be searching for a spark to keep going. I also like to think of sharing as layering. One deep conversation from the podcast might turn into a short, reflective clip, a quote card, or even a small journal prompt. And I'll pause here to say, for those of you who are a part of my Patreon, you are familiar with the quote card or journal prompts that I share in Patreon that I don't post on my social media platforms. So if you have not joined my Patreon, please go to patreon.com/Black-Liberation.Tech. Join the Patreon there and get access to these additional resources that I have layered with the Black-Liberation.Tech world. Okay. It's about creating multiple doorways into the same idea. So, no matter how much time someone has, 60 seconds or 60 minutes, they can still engage with the work in a way that fits their life. And then there's the heart of it all, democratizing knowledge. That's the through line for everything I post. The work has to be useful, accessible, and actionable. So sometimes I'll end a post with something like, think of one girl in your circle who needs encouragement this week. Send her a note or share a resource, because inspiration only matters if it moves people to act. Finally, reposting helps me build community. I love inviting listeners and readers to share their reflections, questions, and stories, whether that's through Patreon, LinkedIn, or even a podcast reply. It's reciprocal. I give, they give, and together we build something bigger than any single post. It's how I resist knowledge hoarding, by creating spaces where ideas circulate freely, where everyone has permission to learn, teach, and grow. All right, let's take a look at the next prompt. Reflect on a time when reposting something online helped you connect with others or raise awareness. For me, reposting isn't just a digital act, it's a part of my philosophy of leaving a trail behind for others to follow. Everything I share through Black-Liberation.Tech, from lessons to reflections, is meant to serve as a guidepost, especially for those coming up after me, like my nieces or nephews. They're part of the reason I document so much. I want them to be able to look back and say, here's how Auntie navigated that. My blog and podcast are living archives of lessons learned, moments of doubt, and the strategies I use to keep moving forward. One of the moments that really stands out was when I shared my reflection after reading Maya Angelou's Letter to My Daughter. That book shifted something in me. It was the moment I realized that I wasn't a writer who teaches, I'm a teacher who writes. That realization helped me reframe my work as both academic and deeply human. When I shared that reflection, I remembered how some of my best mentoring took place through text messages to my conference buddies who I cheered on to the finish line of their programs, text message exchanges between my mentor, and most importantly, text messages to my nieces on Sundays to encourage them and learn about their adventures along their way. Writing has been my best tool in teaching and learning. On the professional side, reposting is also how I make sure women in tech and education are seen. I make it a point to reference and amplify the work of other women, especially Latinas, Afro-Latinas, and Black women whose contributions might otherwise be overlooked. When I highlight their abstracts, methodologies, or open education practices, it's not just about credit. It's about visibility. It's about saying, here's someone you should know. Here's work you should read. Here's a voice that deserves space. That's the real power of sharing and reposting. It connects us across distance and difference. It builds solidarity and belonging. And more than anything, it ensures that no one has to start from scratch, because the path we build post by post becomes a map for someone else's journey. All right, let's take a look at this next prompt. What are the advantages and disadvantages of reposting content on social media or other platforms? Okay. When I think about reposting, I see it as both a bridge and a balance. On one hand, it's one of the most powerful tools we have for amplifying voices and building community. But on the other hand, it comes with responsibility to honor the source, protect context, and make sure what we share uplifts rather than misleads. Let's start with advantages. When I share content, especially in layered formats like turning a full podcast discussion into 60-second clips or a reflective post, it helps make that knowledge accessible to people who might not have time to sit through full episodes. Reposting helps ideas travel farther and meet more people where they are. There's also something deeply human about the reciprocity that happens when we share. It breaks down that expert versus audience barrier and turns it into a conversation. When people see you share freely, it gives them permission to do the same, to take what they've learned and pay it forward. That's how movements grow. Reposting is also identity work. Every time I share something that names race, gender, or power, and pairs it with joy, creativity, and resilience, I'm reaffirming the message that we belong. Representation online isn't just about visibility, it's validation. It says our stories matter, our voices are credible, and our joy is resistant. And finally, reposting inspires action. When I share, I like to pair it with a question or challenge, something that nudges people to move, because learning doesn't change much until it transforms into doing. Now, the other side of that balance. The risks of reposting usually come down to context and care. In our rush to share, it's easy to spread information that hasn't been verified. That's why I always remind people, especially those using AI tools, to double check their sources. Bias is baked into the technology, so you have to interrogate what you're reposting before it goes public. Another challenge is that when we simplify complex ideas into short, shareable clips, we risk losing some of the nuance. I think about that a lot when summarizing research. It's powerful to make ideas accessible, but I'm also mindful of not reducing them beyond recognition. And then there's the question of privacy. Even something as simple as reposting a photo or video clip can reveal more than you intend. Background details, locations, even personal identifiers. It's a reminder that ethical sharing isn't just about the message, but also about protecting yourself and others. So for me, the key to reposting well is balance. Generosity without carelessness, visibility without exposure, accessibility without oversimplification. When done right, reposting becomes more than digital activity. It becomes a form of community care. All right, let's take a look at the next prompt. How can you ensure that you are reposting ethically, giving credit where it is due, and adding value to the conversation? For me, reposting is never just about boosting visibility. It's about integrity, context, and care. Ethical sharing means being thoughtful about what you amplify and how you honor the voices behind it. When I share, I want people to feel both informed and inspired, not overwhelmed or misled. I always start with purpose. Before I hit repost, I ask myself, what story am I helping to tell others here? Every post should serve a clear purpose to illuminate, connect, or move someone toward understanding. For instance, if I'm sharing a takeaway from my research, I don't just drop the data point. I wrap it in a story, a context, a reflection that reminds people that there are real lives behind those numbers. Then there's the question of credit and rigor. I carry my academic training into every creative project I do, whether I'm translating complex qualitative findings into a podcast episode or a reflective blog post. My goal is to preserve rigor without losing heart. I cite openly, so let me pause here. I'll say I learned this theory, I've learned this method, I've learned from someone else, whether I say the person's name or if I mention how I connected with them. For example, when I learned about doddering, I did not find out about daughtering until I attended the prospectus defense of someone in music education. I say that out loud so people don't think that, oh, you were able to find daughtering on your own. No, I went somewhere. I heard somebody else talk about it. I looked it up. I downloaded it and then I read it. So, citing also means sharing how you got the information. And as I noted before in the lessons, let's go to the lesson. I have a note. This is another way that I cite. It says, author, this blog post was created through a collaborative effort incorporating valuable insights from contributors, prompt engineering, and editing by Dr. Jordan, and the assistance of ChatGPT for generating and refining content. So I'm letting you know I had help with this. I didn't do this by myself. And that allows people to have a better understanding of, oh, you were able to do this. Yes, with assistance. Where did I get that assistance from? In this instance, it was ChatGPT. In other instances, I note that I use ChatGPT and Gemini. In other instances, I note that I use ChatGPT, Gemini, and Napkin AI. Napkin AI is how I was able to come up with those visuals here under interactions. So you'll see a note at the bottom of these visuals that were created by Napkin that says prompt engineering and editing by Dr. Jordan and the assistance of Napkin AI for visual storytelling. So I'm telling you how I came up with this. I didn't draw these images. I provided Napkin AI with the different types of interactions, also known as digital literacies. And I note who I'm talking about when I'm saying digital literacies because people will say, oh, digital literacy. Well, I'm referring specifically to Dr. Tisha Lewis Ellison. And at the time, her name was Lewis, and the year that it was provided was in one of her 2009 publications. And that's the definition that I use when I talk about digital literacies. So I say that to say I'm not doing this by myself. Sometimes you'll go to a content creator, you'll go to an influencer, you'll listen to someone talk, and they don't mention anyone else. Now, depending on where you fall in my 60-second clips, you'll find out who I'm referring to. But know that I did not create all of this by myself. And what I also have at my disposal is another tool, and that is called Notebook LM. And Notebook LM allows me to refer back to the content that I've already produced and ask it questions and come up with responses to help me along my way. And I mentioned this, that's how I helped to prepare for a discussion panel. I used Notebook LM. I took the questions that they sent ahead of time and I went to my content to see how I've already discussed AI, algorithms, and access so that I could help prepare myself for succinct responses. And did I read off my notes? No, but I read my notes over and over again. And when I approached the panel, I was able to approach the panel from my standpoint as an instructional technologist, someone who translates the technology tools created by computer scientists, software engineers, the hardcore tech folks to the everyday person. That's where I stand as an instructional technologist. And so that's the perspective that I brought when I participated in the panel. And I was able to create those succinct responses because I practiced what I've already said. I've practiced what I've already thought about. I've practiced what I already shared. And instead of having to think on the spot about all my different ideas, I can be a very long-winded person. People don't have time for that. You have a minute and a half, 2 minutes to respond to a question, and you want to make sure that it is a concentrated response as opposed to one that takes too long for you to get to the point. Because when you're on a panel like that, it's not that it's fast paced, it can be casual and paced, but you have to be able to deliver your point, deliver it well, and deliver it in a short amount of time so that others will have time to respond. So I say all that to say, whenever you see my content, whether it's in a 60-second post or the whole podcast episode, know that I didn't come up with this information by myself and I've had help. And as a result of having help, I'm able to stretch my scalability in terms of what I'm able to complete in a short period of time. And that's something that I hope you all are able to do with the content that you produce, with the content that you're interested in. I shared that I came across Notebook LM because I was watching social media and someone showed me how they were using it to study for a test. And I was like, they're using it to study for a test. I can use it to access my content and ask questions and get responses based on the hours and hours of content that I have produced already in order to create succinct responses to big questions. And so, with all that being said, I want to encourage you to access the tools that will serve you, that will work with you, that will help you to expand your capacity, that will help you dig through the things that you already have in place. So, if you are a content creator or if you are a student, take advantage of these tools so that you can create quizzes for yourself, so that you can test yourself, so that when you walk into the classroom, you're able to discuss things at a level that shows that you've practiced with the information ahead of time, as opposed to it being the first time that you're seeing or hearing it. And that allows for a more engaging discussion. That allows for you to be able to discuss things at a deeper level because you're able to get to the nuts and the bolts as opposed to the long-winded response that people really don't have time for. It's nice that you can talk about things at length, but the things that you love so much need to be able to be accessed with those who might be learning it for the first time in a succinct manner. Okay, so that's my soapbox about citing. Once again, I want to thank you for listening to another episode of the Black-Liberation.Tech podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Renee Jordan. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and share, rate and review the podcast to help it become more discoverable. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.